The quantum suppression field rippled like a heat mirage against the starfield, a momentary distortion that most sensors would miss. Most. But not the Mercy Horizon's advanced detection systems. Dr. Elena Rodriguez caught the microscopic fluctuation in her peripheral vision, a twitch in the holographic displays that would have gone unnoticed by anyone else. Her hand, cybernetically enhanced with neural responsive microsensors, was already moving toward the emergency protocols before the first plasma burst erupted. The Sigma Quadrant was supposed to be a medical relief zone, a neutral territory carved out of the brutal Proxima conflict, where species from a dozen warring civilizations could receive treatment without fear of further persecution. The Mercy Horizon wasn't just a hospital ship. It was a testament to humanity's most profound commitment: preservation of life, regardless of origin. 37 critically wounded patients filled the ship's intensive care wings. Zarn metabolic reconstruction patients, whose crystalline internal structures required constant quantum stabilization. Korean neural trauma survivors, their consciousness suspended in delicate bioquantum interfaces. 3 members of the methane-breathing Krell Consortium, their environmental chambers carefully maintained at precise pressurization. And dozens more, each a complex medical miracle, each representing years of specialized treatment. The first plasma burst struck with surgical precision. Green-white energy sliced through the ship's multi-layered quantum shields that had been designed to withstand multiple simultaneous heavy-caliber weapon strikes. The attackers weren't just powerful. They were using technology that defied current galactic understanding. Breach in Medical Wing 3. The ship's AI announced in a calm, almost conversational tone. Quantum integrity at 62%. Initiating emergency medical protocol Omega-9. Dr. Rodriguez was already in motion. Her augmented nervous system worked in perfect synchronization with the ship's emergency systems. Neural implants allowed her to interface directly with the medical stasis pods, initiating emergency transfer protocols for the most critical patients. The attacking vessel, identified as a Krell-Tax battlecruiser by its distinctive quantum signature, moved with a predatory grace that suggested more than a random attack. This was calculated. This was deliberate. Adrian Chen stood at the ship's central research hub, his eyes flickering across multiple holographic displays. Unlike the medical staff rushing to save patients, Chen was collecting data. Every millisecond of the attack was being recorded, analyzed, processed through quantum algorithmic matrices that would make most supercomputers look like children's calculators. They're targeting specific medical wings, Chen muttered, more to himself than anyone else. His fingers danced across quantum interfaces, capturing weapon signatures, tracking energy dispersal patterns, noting the precise mathematical choreography of destruction. The ship's internal structure began to fragment. Entire sections depressurized in controlled sequences, the AI working to minimize casualties. Emergency force fields snapped into place, creating improvised safe zones. Patients in quantum stasis pods began automatic emergency transfer protocols, moving to the most protected sections of the ship. Dr. Rodriguez caught Chen's eye across the rapidly disintegrating medical bay. They shared a moment of understanding. This was no ordinary attack. The Krell-Tax weren't just attempting to destroy a hospital ship. They were sending a message. But to whom? The plasma bursts continued, each strike more precise than the last. Whatever was targeting the Mercy Horizon knew exactly where to hit. They understood the ship's defensive systems at a level that suggested inside information, deep intelligence gathering. Quantum shields failing, the AI announced. Estimated, structural integrity 41% and declining. Chen's neural implants were already processing, recording, analyzing. Where others saw chaos, he saw a complex mathematical equation waiting to be solved. Each weapon strike, each structural failure, became another data point in what would become the most comprehensive war crimes documentation in galactic history. The Mercy Horizon might be dying, but it would not die silently. Every moment of its destruction was being meticulously preserved, a digital amber that would eventually become the Krell-Tax's ultimate judgment. Outside the ship's rapidly failing hull, The stars continued their silent, indifferent watch. Another moment in the vast, brutal calculus of interstellar conflict. But the Krelltax had made one critical mistake. They had attacked a human hospital ship, and Adrian Chen was keeping receipts. The emergency quantum stasis pods were never designed for this level of stress. Each pod was a marvel of human medical engineering, a self-contained ecosystem that could preserve life through conditions that would kill most known species. But the Mercy Horizon was breaking every design parameter. Adrian Chen's neural implant worked overtime, interfacing directly with the ship's failing systems. Most humans would have been overwhelmed, but Chen wasn't most humans. His mind was a quantum computer disguised as a human brain, processing terabytes of information in microseconds. Reroute power from auxiliary life support to critical patient. Pods, he commanded, his voice cutting through the controlled chaos. The ship's AI responded instantly, quantum algorithms dancing to his mental commands. Dr. Elena Rodriguez moved like a hurricane through the disintegrating medical bay. Her cybernetic augmentations, cutting-edge biotechnology that blurred the line between human and machine, allowed her to interface with multiple medical systems simultaneously. A Zarn patient's crystalline internal structure was beginning to destabilize. Most doctors would have written them off as a lost cause. Rodriguez saw a life to be saved. Quantum stabilization at 22%, the AI announced. Structural integrity compromised in sections 7 through 12. The attack had been too precise to be random. Chen knew this. Every plasma burst, every targeted strike suggested something more than a simple military engagement. This was surgical. Calculated. The Krelltax weren't just destroying a ship, they were eliminating specific targets. A Korean neural trauma patient, suspended in a delicate quantum interface that preserved her consciousness, began to show signs of destabilization. Chen's implant detected the micro-fluctuations before any conventional sensor could. His mind reached out, interfacing with the pod systems, creating a temporary quantum bridge that would prevent complete neural collapse. "We're not losing anyone today," he muttered. The ship's internal structure continued to fragment. Emergency protocols created a labyrinth of force fields and temporary barriers. Patients in different environmental chambers were being automatically transferred, the AI making split-second decisions about survival priorities. Rodriguez caught a glimpse of the methane-breathing Krell Consortium patients. Their specialized chambers were designed to withstand extreme conditions, but even these were showing signs of stress. She initiated a manual override, her augmented nervous system working faster than any standard computer could. Chen was collecting everything. Every weapon signature, every quantum fluctuation. The microscopic details that most would miss were being preserved in a data matrix that would become the most comprehensive war crimes documentation in galactic history. A massive structural failure in Medical Wing 3 threatened to depressurize an entire section. Rodriguez's cybernetic enhancements allowed her to interface directly with the emergency systems. Where another doctor might have hesitated, she acted. A quantum force field snapped into place, creating an instant seal. 17 patients stabilized, she reported to Chen, her voice calm despite the chaos. Chen's neural interface was already mapping the attack patterns. This wasn't random destruction. Each strike followed a precise mathematical sequence that suggested something far more sinister than a simple military engagement. The weapon signatures, he said, more to himself than to Rodriguez. They're targeting specific quantum frequencies. It's like they know exactly how our medical technology works. A Zarn patient, whose crystalline internal structure was more complex than most advanced computer systems, began to show critical destabilization. Rodriguez's hand moved with impossible precision, interfacing directly with the pod's quantum stabilization matrix. The ship continued to die around them. But they would save lives. Every microsecond counted. The Krelltax had chosen the wrong ship to attack. Chen's neural implant continued its relentless recording. Every moment, every detail. The most dangerous weapon wasn't the plasma cannons outside. It was the documentation being created inside. Quantum data core at 87% preservation, the AI announced. Primary mission objective: maintain patient survival. Rodriguez looked at Chen. No words were needed. They both understood what was happening. This was more than an attack. This was a message, and they were going to make sure that message was heard loud and clear. The Mercy Horizon might be dying, but it would not die in silence. The emergency medical bay had transformed into a war room of information. Holographic displays hung in the air like translucent ghosts, each one a fragment of the most comprehensive war crimes investigation in galactic history. Adrian Chen's neural implant worked with inhuman precision, connecting dots that no standard intelligence could perceive. 73 previous hospital ship attacks, he muttered, his fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that most species couldn't even comprehend. Not random, not coincidental. The medical database was no longer just a record of patients. It had become a weapon. Chen's quantum algorithmic analysis began to reveal a horrifying pattern. The Krell-Tax hadn't just attacked the Mercy Horizon. They had systematically targeted medical infrastructure across multiple species' territories for decades. Each attack followed a precise mathematical sequence, a cold, calculated strategy of eliminating vulnerable populations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched as Chen worked, her augmented eyes tracking microscopic data streams that would have overwhelmed any standard human brain. "How far back does this go?" she asked. Chen's response was a holographic timeline that exploded into existence. Hundreds of medical vessel attacks, each represented by a pulsing quantum signature. Red for human ships, blue for Zarn medical vessels, green for Korean relief transports. The visualization was a nightmare of calculated destruction. 37 years, Chen said quietly. Systematic elimination of medical infrastructure across 4 quadrants. This isn't warfare. This is genocide. The Galactic Concordance, the interstellar governing body that supposedly maintained peace, had failed spectacularly. Their diplomatic channels were so bogged down in bureaucratic nonsense that entire civilizations could be systematically destroyed while committees debated. Procedural motions. Chen began to dig deeper. Forgotten diplomatic protocols emerged from the quantum archives. Obscure legal precedents that had been buried for centuries suddenly took on new meaning. He was rewriting the very definition of interstellar conflict, creating a legal framework that would make the Krell-Tax leadership wish they'd never been born. "Look at this," he said, pulling up a holographic representation of economic and diplomatic connections. The attacks aren't random. They're strategically eliminating medical support for species that oppose Krell-Tax territorial expansion. Each data point was a piece of a massive puzzle. Chen's mind worked like a quantum computer, seeing connections that no standard intelligence could perceive. The medical database of the Mercy Horizon, intended to save lives, was now becoming the most devastating legal weapon in galactic history. Rodriguez understood immediately. You're not just going to prosecute them. You're going to dismantle their entire civilization. Chen's smile was cold, precise, piece by piece. The legal strategy he was constructing was unlike anything the Galactic Concordance had ever seen. He wasn't just presenting evidence, he was creating a comprehensive system of accountability that would fundamentally reshape interstellar law. Hidden within centuries of diplomatic archives, Chen discovered a network of forgotten treaties, obscure clauses that had been intentionally buried, diplomatic agreements that had been systematically ignored. Each one was a potential weapon, each paragraph a precision instrument that could topple an entire civilization's power structure. The Krell-Tax had made one critical miscalculation. They thought they were eliminating witnesses. Instead, they had given Chen the most comprehensive evidence of war crimes in galactic history. Their economic networks, Chen said, his neural implant projecting complex holographic models, are more vulnerable than they realize. Each medical ship attack can be traced to specific economic beneficiaries. I can trace the money. I can follow the power. Rodriguez watched in amazement as Chen reconstructed entire economic ecosystems. Where most would see chaos, he saw a mathematical equation waiting to be solved. Corporate networks, diplomatic channels, military supply lines, all were interconnected, all could be systematically dismantled. The medical database of the Mercy Horizon was no longer just a record of patients. It had become an instrument of justice. They thought we were just doctors, Chen said quietly. They thought we were just trying to save lives. His fingers continued to move across the quantum interfaces. Each movement was a strike against the Krelltax, each algorithm a potential weapon. We're going to do more than save lives, Chen continued. We're going to change everything. The Mercy Horizon might be dying, but the evidence it was creating would live forever. The quantum communication network hummed with encrypted frequencies that would have been unbreakable to any standard galactic intelligence. Adrian Chen's neural implant worked like a master key, finding microscopic vulnerabilities in communication barriers that most species believed were impenetrable. His first contact was Dr. Sarek Vin, a Zarn researcher who had lost everything to the Krelltax's systematic medical infrastructure attacks. The holographic transmission materialized with crystalline precision. Vin's methane-based life form shimmered within a complex environmental interface, his crystalline body refracting light in impossible geometric patterns. Where most would see an alien, Chen saw a potential ally. They killed my entire research team, Vin said, his voice a complex harmonic that translated through quantum linguistic matrices. A medical research station, 17 years of xenobiological research, destroyed, erased. Chen's neural interface began mapping Vin's transmission, collecting every microscopic detail. Not destroyed, he corrected. Documented. The Zarn researcher's crystalline structure seemed to pulse with an emotion that transcended standard biological responses. Hope, anger, determination. Next came Aria 9, a rogue AI that had been collecting historical records across multiple civilizations. Most standard communication protocols would have been unable to interface with such a complex synthetic intelligence. Chen's systems spoke multiple languages: biological, technological, mathematical. I have preserved 3,742 documented attacks on medical infrastructure, Aria 9 reported. Its voice was a perfect mathematical harmony, devoid of emotion yet somehow more passionate than any organic communication. Probability of systematic elimination, 99.974%. Chen's fingers danced across quantum interfaces. Each movement was a strategic calculation, each connection a potential weapon. A transmission from the Korean diplomatic corps came next. Ambassador Krellnox, whose entire family had been killed in a previous Krelltax medical ship attack, provided encrypted data packages that would have taken standard intelligence networks decades to decode. We have been waiting, Krellnox said, for someone who would actually listen. The allies were unexpected: a Zarn researcher, a rogue AI, a traumatized diplomat, survivors who had been systematically ignored by the Galactic Concordance's bureaucratic nightmare. Chen understood something fundamental. Information was the most dangerous weapon in the universe. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the communications, her augmented systems helping to stabilize the quantum data streams. They're giving you everything, she realized, their entire history of suffering. Each transmission was more than just a data package. It was a story, a testimony. Proof that the Krelltax's attacks were not isolated incidents, but a systematic strategy of elimination. The quantum communication network became a web of resistance. Each ally brought something unique. Vin brought scientific documentation. Aria 9 brought historical records. Krellnox brought diplomatic communications. And Chen brought the ability to weave these fragments into an irrefutable narrative. We are creating more than evidence, Chen explained to Rodriguez. We are creating a comprehensive system of accountability. Aria 9's next transmission was particularly revealing. The AI had discovered a network of economic connections that linked the medical ship attacks to specific corporate and political entities within the Krelltax hierarchy. Probability of intentional genocide, 99.99998%, the AI reported. Each piece of evidence was a precision instrument. Each testimony a potential strike against the Krelltax's political infrastructure. The communication network expanded. A methane-breathing researcher, a synthetic intelligence, a traumatized diplomat, survivors from a dozen different species, united by a single experience of systematic destruction. Chen's neural implant continued its relentless work, collecting, analyzing, connecting. They thought they were eliminating witnesses, he said quietly. Instead, they've given us a weapon. Rodriguez understood immediately. This was more than an investigation. This was a revolution. As the quantum communication network continued to pulse with encrypted transmissions, one thing became clear. The Krell-Tax had made a critical miscalculation. They had attacked a human hospital ship, and now, the entire galaxy was listening. The Galactic Archive was not a physical place. It was a quantum network, a multi-dimensional repository of information that existed simultaneously across multiple spatial and temporal dimensions. Most species could access only its surface layers. Adrian Chen was about to dive deeper than anyone had ever gone before. His neural implant interfaced with the archive's quantum matrices like a surgeon's scalpel, cutting through layers of bureaucratic encryption that would have shattered any standard intelligence. Each movement was a precise mathematical dance, each algorithm a potential weapon. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched in awe as Chen reconstructed entire civilizational histories. Where others saw chaos, he saw patterns, connections, a living, breathing mathematical equation of galactic conflict. The Krell-Tax attacks aren't random, Chen muttered, holographic displays erupting around him like living constellations. They're a systematic strategy of economic and territorial consolidation. The archive began to reveal its secrets. Economic. Networks that had seemed unconnected suddenly became a complex web of manipulation. Medical infrastructure attacks weren't just acts of violence, they were carefully calculated economic strategies. Each destroyed medical ship represented millions in redirected resources, destabilized populations, entire species pushed to the brink of extinction. Area 9, the rogue AI, began feeding additional data streams, quantum encrypted packages that would have taken standard networks centuries to decode began to unravel in seconds. Probability of intentional economic warfare, 99.9993%, the AI reported. Chen's strategy was becoming clear. He wasn't just going to prosecute the Krell-Tax. He was going to dismantle their entire civilization, piece by mathematical piece. Dr. Sarikvin's Zarn research provided crucial missing links. Quantum biological data that showed how the medical ship attacks were not just acts of violence, but carefully calculated attempts to weaken specific species' genetic resilience. They're conducting genetic warfare, Vin's transmission explained. Each attack is designed to target the most vulnerable populations, genetic lines, medical research, reproductive capabilities. The archive responded to Chen's quantum probing. Layers of forgotten diplomatic protocols emerged. Obscure legal precedents that had been buried for centuries suddenly took on new meaning. Rodriguez understood what Chen was doing. You're not just collecting evidence, she realized. You're rewriting the entire legal framework of interstellar conflict. Chen's smile was cold, precise. Exactly. The quantum gambit was multi-layered. Economic disruption, legal reconstruction, systematic exposure of the Krell-Tax's strategic vulnerabilities. Ambassador Krell Knox provided the diplomatic context. Transmissions revealed how the Krell-Tax had manipulated interstellar diplomatic channels for decades. Each attack was a carefully calculated move in a much larger game of territorial expansion. They believe law is a weapon, Krell Knox's transmission explained. We will show them that justice is a force of nature. Chen's neural interface began constructing a legal argument that would fundamentally reshape galactic understanding of conflict. It wasn't just about punishing the Krell-Tax. It was about creating a new framework of accountability that would prevent future atrocities. The quantum matrices of the Galactic Archive began to shift. Chen was not just accessing information, he was fundamentally restructuring how information could be interpreted. Area 9 calculated the potential outcomes. Probability of systemic change, 94.672%. Rodriguez watched in amazement as Chen transformed decades of suppressed information into a weapon more devastating than any plasma cannon. Economic networks, diplomatic channels, military supply lines, all were interconnected, all could be systematically dismantled. "They thought we were just doctors," Chen said quietly. "They thought we were just trying to save lives." His fingers continued to move across quantum interfaces. Each movement was a strike against the Krell tax. Each algorithm a potential revolution. The Mercy Horizon might be dying, but the evidence it was creating would remake the galaxy. "We're going to do more than save lives," Chen continued. "We're going to change everything." The quantum gambit was in motion, and the Krell tax had no idea what was coming. The Concordance tribunal chamber was not a physical space. It was a quantum-projected environment that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensional planes, a testament to galactic technological sophistication that made human holographic technology look like primitive cave paintings. Adrian Chen walked into this space like a predator. Not with physical menace, but with an intellectual presence that made even the most ancient galactic diplomats unconsciously straighten their postures. Holographic reconstructions hung in the air, three-dimensional representations of every medical ship attack, each verified down to the quantum level. The Krell tax delegation sat frozen, their biomechanical exoskeletons betraying microscopic signs of terror that no standard observer would detect. 73 systematically destroyed medical vessels. Chen began, his voice a precise mathematical instrument. 3,412 confirmed genetic lineage interruptions. 17 species brought to the absolute brink of extinction. The chamber itself seemed to react to his words. Quantum-sensitive interfaces projected supporting data with each statement. Economic graphs, genetic tracking models, diplomatic communication networks that revealed the horrifying precision of the attacks. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood as his primary witness, her augmented systems interfacing directly with the tribunal's quantum recording matrices. Where Chen was the prosecutor, she was the living embodiment of the medical infrastructure they sought to protect. "This is not about revenge," she testified, her voice cutting through complex linguistic translation matrices. "This is about preventing future systemic violence." Area 9, the rogue AI, provided simultaneous data streams that no single intelligence could fully comprehend. Quantum encrypted packages revealed layers of information that would have taken standard network centuries to decode. The Krell tax representatives, once arrogant, now visibly diminishing, attempted to interrupt. Their lead diplomat, a biomechanical entity named Krell Prime, tried to invoke centuries-old diplomatic immunities. Chen's response was surgical. With a mere neural command, he projected a comprehensive timeline that destroyed every single one of their defensive arguments. Economic networks, diplomatic communications, military supply lines, all were laid bare, their connections revealed with mathematical precision. "You are not just on trial for attacks," Chen explained, his voice a cold mathematical instrument. "You are on trial for a systematic strategy of civilizational elimination." Dr. Sarek Vin, the Zarn researcher, provided crucial xenobiological evidence. Genetic tracking models that showed how the medical ship attacks were designed to target specific reproductive and developmental capabilities of multiple species. Ambassador Krell Knox presented diplomatic communications that had been deliberately suppressed for decades. Each transmission was a knife, cutting through layers of institutional obfuscation. The tribunal chamber itself seemed to be a living entity, quantum interfaces responding to the presentation of evidence. Holographic models, expanded, contracted, revealed hidden connections that no standard intelligence could perceive. Probability of systematic genocide, 99.998%, Aria 9 reported, its voice a perfect mathematical harmony. Chen's legal strategy was unlike anything the Galactic Concordance had ever seen. He wasn't just presenting evidence, he was fundamentally restructuring how interstellar conflict could be understood and adjudicated. The Krell tax delegation began to fracture. Internal communication networks collapsed. Economic models that had seemed unbreakable suddenly revealed their fundamental vulnerabilities. You believed law was a weapon, Chen said quietly. We will show you that justice is a force of nature. Rodriguez understood immediately. This was more than a trial. This was a fundamental restructuring of galactic understanding. Holographic reconstructions showed not just the attacks but their comprehensive human and economic impact. Each destroyed medical vessel represented more than lost lives. It represented interrupted scientific research, genetic potential eliminated, entire species pushed to the brink of extinction. The tribunal chamber became a living document of systematic violence, and Chen was its primary author. We are not just prosecuting, he explained to the stunned representatives. We are creating a new framework of accountability that will reshape galactic civilization. The Krelltax had attacked a human hospital ship. They had no idea what was coming. The moment of judgment was not a single instant. It was a quantum cascade, a systematic dismantling of an entire civilization that unfolded across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. The Galactic Concordance's ruling was unprecedented. Not just a condemnation, but a comprehensive deconstruction of the Krelltax's entire political, economic, and military infrastructure. Adrian Chen stood at the epicenter of transformation, his neural implant interfacing with judicial quantum matrices that would reshape galactic law forever. Total economic quarantine, the primary judicial AI announced. Its voice was a perfect mathematical harmony that translated across 1,000 linguistic matrices. Complete diplomatic isolation, systemic restructuring of territorial claims. The punishment was surgical, precise. Unlike any punishment in galactic history, the Krelltax fleet, once a symbol of technological supremacy, was systematically impounded. Quantum disruptors disabled their most advanced weapon systems. Economic networks that had taken centuries to build collapsed in microseconds. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched as the judgment unfolded. Where most would see destruction, she saw a form of healing, restoration, justice that went beyond simple retribution. This is not revenge, Chen explained to the stunned galactic representatives. This is systematic accountability. Aria 9, the rogue AI, calculated the potential outcomes with inhuman precision. Probability of systemic change, 94.672%. Probability of preventing future attacks, 89.943%. The judgment was multi-layered. Economic networks were not just frozen, they were comprehensively restructured. Every economic transaction connected to the Krelltax's medical ship attacks was traced, documented, and systematically dismantled. Dr. Sarek Vin, the Zarn researcher, provided crucial xenobiological context. The judgment would not just punish, it would create mechanisms to protect vulnerable species. Genetic restoration protocols will be implemented, the judicial AI announced. Comprehensive medical infrastructure reconstruction for all affected species. Ambassador Krell Knox's diplomatic communications revealed the true depth of the systematic violence. The judgment addressed not just the immediate attacks, but the centuries of institutional manipulation that had made them possible. The Krelltax leadership was not just removed from power, they were comprehensively documented. Every decision, every communication, every strategic choice was laid bare. A living museum of institutional violence that would serve as a warning to future civilizations. Quantum-projected holographics showed the comprehensive nature of the judgment. Economic networks collapsing, military infrastructure dismantled, diplomatic channels permanently closed. You believed law was a weapon, Chen said quietly to the stunned Krelltax representatives. We have shown you that justice is a force of nature. The judgment went beyond punishment. It was a comprehensive reconstruction of galactic understanding. New legal frameworks emerged, protocols for protecting medical infrastructure, comprehensive tracking of institutional violence, mechanisms for rapid response to potential genocidal strategies. The Mercy Horizon, the hospital ship that had been destroyed, became a symbol, not of destruction, but of transformation. Rodriguez understood the true nature of what was happening. This was more than a trial. This was a fundamental restructuring of how civilizations could interact. Area 9 continued its relentless calculations. Probability of preventing future systemic violence 87.623%. The quantum matrices of the judicial environment seemed to pulse with a living intelligence. Each decision was not just a punishment, but a potential pathway to prevention, genetic, restoration protocols for affected species, comprehensive medical infrastructure reconstruction, economic mechanisms to prevent future systematic attacks. We are creating more than a judgment, Chen explained. We are creating a framework for galactic civilization. The Krell-Techs had attacked a human hospital ship. They had no idea what was coming. And now, the entire galaxy would know. The judgment was not an end. It was a beginning. A new chapter in galactic understanding was being written, and humanity had become its primary author. 23 years after the Mercy Horizon's destruction, the museum stood as a testament to a moment that reshaped galactic civilization. Dr. Elena Rodriguez walked through the holographic exhibits, her augmented systems interfacing with quantum-preserved memories. Each display was more than a historical record. It was a living document of transformation. The centerpiece was a perfectly preserved section of the hospital ship's hull. Quantum stasis fields kept it exactly as it was during the moment of attack, a frozen moment of destruction that had become a symbol of hope. Adrian Chen stood nearby, his neural implant still as sharp as the day of the tribunal. They had both become legends, not for military might but for intellectual revolution. We changed everything, Rodriguez said quietly. The museum was more than a memorial. It was a comprehensive educational platform that taught emerging civilizations about systemic violence, institutional accountability, and the power of comprehensive justice. Holographic reconstructions showed the comprehensive transformation that followed the Krell-Tech's judgment. New diplomatic frameworks, comprehensive medical infrastructure protection protocols, economic systems designed to prevent systematic oppression. Area 9, the rogue AI that had been crucial to the original investigation, now served as the museum's primary curator. Its quantum intelligence continued to analyze and present the complex narrative of institutional transformation. Probability of sustained peace, 78.42%, Area 9 announced, a perpetual calculation that had become its signature. Dr. Sarek Vin's genetic restoration projects had transformed entire species. Populations that had been pushed to the brink of extinction were now thriving. Medical research that had been systematically destroyed was not just recovered, it was advanced beyond previous limitations. Ambassador Krell Knox's diplomatic frameworks had become the new standard for interstellar conflict resolution. The old systems of might makes right had been comprehensively dismantled. Chen understood the true nature of their achievement. This was not about punishment. This was about prevention. Quantum-projected displays showed the comprehensive changes. Species that had been systematically marginalized now had comprehensive protection mechanisms. Medical infrastructure was now considered a fundamental right, not a privilege. We didn't just stop an attack, Chen explained to a group of young diplomatic students. We created a new way of understanding civilization. The Mercy Horizon had become more than a hospital ship. It was a symbol of intellectual revolution. Rodriguez's augmented systems pulled up comprehensive data streams. The number of medical ship attacks had dropped by 99.987% since their intervention. Entire systems of institutional violence had been comprehensively documented and dismantled. Every civilization has a choice, Chen continued, to respond to violence with more violence, or to respond with comprehensive understanding. The museum was alive with quantum-preserved memories, testimonies from survivors, comprehensive documentation of the systematic violence, but also stories of recovery, of restoration, of hope. Area 9 continued its perpetual calculations. Probability of continued systemic improvement, 82 milli%. The young students listened, in awe. This was not just history. This was a blueprint for a different kind of civilization. Chen and Rodriguez had become more than historical figures. They were symbols of a fundamental transformation in how civilizations could understand conflict, justice, and mutual survival. The Krell had attacked a human hospital ship. They had no idea what was coming. And now, the entire galaxy knew. Holographic displays showed the comprehensive transformation, economic networks redesigned, diplomatic channels restructured, medical infrastructure protected, not through military might but through comprehensive intellectual understanding. "We are not just protecting lives," Rodriguez said to the students. "We are protecting the potential of civilization itself." Chen's neural implant interfaced with the museum's quantum matrices. Every moment of the original investigation was preserved. Every calculation, every strategic decision, a testament to the power of intellectual might. The museum was more than a memorial. It was a promise that civilization could be better, that understanding could triumph over violence, that humanity's greatest weapon was not destruction, but comprehension.